This morning when I got up, I figured, what am I going to do for lunch? So I went on my phone, on my app, and kosher near me, yeah, that's kosher. And I found, believe it or not, there's about 50 kosher places to eat within a 6 or 7 minute walk. 50 kosher places. And then, just in case you want to figure, where do I daven Ma'ariv tonight? Okay, you look online, there's about 25 shuls, again, in walking distance. And think about it. I don't know how many guys went away for Pesach, but there's programs in New York, New Jersey, Florida, California, Spain, Morocco, Italy, certainly Eretz Yisrael. Plenty of options that we have as Torah Jews. But imagine if you didn't have these choices. You didn't have any of these choices. What would you do? So I'm guessing many people say, look, I don't have it, I'll live without it. I'll make Pesach at home. I'll figure out my own food. I'll try to get a local minyan, maybe there's a minyan, 1 minyan in the community, but I'll do without it. Well, let's take it a step further. Let's say you couldn't do it not because it wasn't available, but because it was illegal, which means it was punishable. That means to say that if you dared to eat kosher, to put on tefillin, to put on tzitzis, or to daven publicly, you'd be arrested. I'm guessing many of us, and I include myself because you don't know what you would do under the worst of conditions, may have said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm not sure if you realize, and Baruch Hashem you don't, that the laws in the Soviet Union, up until recent times, were simply no. You could not do any of these things. In fact, in 1992, Rabbi Hart probably remember when we opened the yeshiva, we had a young man that joined us. His name was Boris. He never, Rabbi Farkas as well, right? Boris never had a bris. We hired a tutor for him to teach him English. Svetlana, I think her name was. We made sure he had a bris, right? A couple of years later, another young man came to us, never had a pigeon haben. Didn't know what a pigeon haben was, because Jews weren't allowed to do that kind of stuff. So imagine growing up, your age guys, in a society where there was no kosher allowed, certainly couldn't get a bris milah. Shocking type of things. So, Jewish expression was not allowed. In fact, wearing tzitzis, tefillin, none of that was allowed. We had someone speak here years ago, before you guys got here, a non-Jewish guy, and he spoke about how, I think he was a politician, how he went to the Soviet Union, and they heard he was going to visit some refuseniks. The Jews in Russia were called refuseniks, right? Because they were adamant about keeping their Judaism. So he's told to wear tzitzis. Why? Because when he gets to Israel, when he gets to Russia, he's going to give the tzitzis to a Jewish guy. And this guy later spoke in Coney Island where there's a lot of Russian Jews that, came to America. And he's telling the story, and one guy in the back says, I'm the guy he gave the tzitzis to. Think about it. So we're talking about a modern historical event, kind of in our lifetime, your parents' lifetime, that really were barred from anything Jewish. And to my mind, and I think it's correct to say, that over the past 100 years, the two main anti-Semitic forces we face, we all know about the Holocaust. Hopefully we're aware of it, maybe not all the details. The Nazis, the יימח שמם, and the Russians and the communists, same thing. The Russians obliterated Jewish identity, Jewish life. They killed people too. But basically, shuls were banned. We spoke earlier in the year about what's going on in Vilna. The tombstones, they went to the basic course. Imagine somebody being buried somewhere and they just knocked down, they raised the tombstones, right? So nothing Jewish was allowed. No tzitzis, no tefillin, no matzah, nothing was allowed. And miraculously, Jews somehow knew that Simchas Torah was coming and they would get together at the great synagogue in Moscow, but that was it. Nothing else was allowed. So I'll ask you, don't answer me, what would you do? What would each one of us do under those circumstances? And I think that the vast majority of Jews said, what am I going to do? There's nothing to do. How can I be a Torah Jew? How can I be a Jew that identifies with Judaism? And in many countries, Jews are Jews and they not only don't wear a yarmulke, because they're not allowed to, they don't want to be connected to Judaism, because it's bad news, they'll get in trouble. But yet there were some Jews that resisted. Jews that demonstrated Jewish pride, and Jews that resisted by keeping mitzvahs to the best of their ability under the worst of conditions. What did we do? And when I say we, those old enough to have been aware and alive at the time, So there were groups. Student Struggle for Soviet Jewry, Triple SJ, Jewish Defense League, JDL. And I have to say, probably, I have no doubt that participation, we had rallies, we pushed politically, that was probably what inspired me, Rabbi LF, and others to say, hey, let's get involved even later on to hopefully inspire the next generation. I spoke to one person, Lisa Reich, whose kids graduated years ago, so I told her, and she said, listen, I want to get involved. My father, Oliver Shalom, who passed away, she said, was a sponsor of all these types of things, so count me in. Anything you do that's, pro-Jewish activism, count me in. But those were things we tried to do. I think even Mr. Goldman, as a young guy, came to one of the rallies. A little old, we were a little older back then. But these are rallies that we did whatever we can to help the Jews, the Jewish dissidents, refuseniks, prisoners of conscience. And in one case, there was a courageous Jew that stood up for Judaism, Torah and mitzvos, and he desperately wanted to get out, and you know what? He hijacked the plane. He attempted to hijack a plane to get out, and he was caught, and he was sent to jail. Now, I would argue the whole Russia was a jail for any Jew, but this is a smaller jail, where you're confined to a very small cell. And despite that, perhaps political pressure helps, Siyata Dishmaya certainly got him out. And he made Aliyah, and it is my pleasure to introduce him today, but I'm going to introduce him in two ways. One, by video, and two, in person. So let's get the video going first.
I have been and training in more
Louder.
What will be my future? Nobody told me. I was afraid with my situation, and I asked many officials, and nobody answered me. What will came?
Okay. The man is Rabbi Yosef Mendelevitch, who actually happens to write a book. Okay, if you want to buy it, you can buy it on Amazon or here, but this is not about books. It's about hearing an unbelievably inspirational individual that is here to speak to us this morning, Rabbi Mendelevitch.
So, I will tell you some stories. To begin with, explain you how a regular Soviet Jew, a member of a communist youth movement, became an activist in underground Jewish movement. It's like a real move from one position to another. And then you mentioned maybe that my time, mostly people were ashamed being Jewish, and we tried to behave like everybody. For it was not only the issue of being ashamed to be a Russian or Latvian, meant to belong to white race, to be somebody. A Jew is like somebody underprivileged. And as far as the Jews speak every language better than they, now Russian language was good, and we behaved like Russians, but for some reason they could find out easily that we are not them. Not specifically that we had yarmulkas and payas or whatever, we had nothing. But still they could find easily that we are Jewish, that we don't belong. It was too bad. And I tell a story of step-by-step development, but I will tell you another story, or maybe one of the last steps. When I was in a high school, there were some Jews in my class, and a friend of mine told me that there is activity in a Jewish cemetery that the Jewish use in my native place, which is Riga, Latvia, not specifically Russia, but at that time Latvia was under Russian occupation, so I was a Soviet Russian Jew. There is an activity to rebuild, reconstruct the Jewish cemetery. So mostly friends didn't accept it. Sunday was the only free day, and somebody would say, I have tickets to see a movie with my girlfriend, and somebody would say, we have to study for tests, for exams. And I had a special feeling. I thought to myself, what? There's a Jewish place, and Jews will come together and do something for a Jewish nation. I have to be there. See, it's kind of freedom of decision. Somebody went to see the movie with his girlfriend, not bad at all. Somebody studied for exams, well, and I decided I will go in, I will see what's about. So I took a bus. It was far away. People told that it is in a suburb of Riga, Latvia. I stopped out, looked for a cemetery. There was no cemetery around. So I felt, this friend that told me, just pull my leg. By the way, I apologize for my English. I am Israeli, so I can speak Hebrew. I'm here for a short visit. So if you understand Hebrew, I prefer better לדבר עברית. But I will make my effort to speak English. Anyway, it's not. Anyway, so when going back, disappointed, back to the bus station, I had a last looked around, and all of a sudden, I saw far away, in between trees in a forest, for it was a rural suburb with a village, with some field and a forest. I noticed that there are some people inside the forest, looked closely, and I felt that they are Jewish, that are people that are looking for. So I start running through the field, to the forest, and something inside me told me, Yosef, it's a new important page in your life, like kind of Ruach HaKodesh. So when I come to see the people in the forest, really, they were Jewish. Sometimes, I believe you know the song of Hinei Matovu Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, how pleasant to be together. You maybe don't have the feeling, for you are all the time together. For me, it was special to find people like me, with a Jewish nose, Jewish eyes, Jewish lips. There is a story as Yosef met his brother, and then it was negative meeting. Somehow it was important. Anyway, this time Yosef, met the brother. It was a tikkun of the meeting that used to happen many thousand years ago. I was pleased that it was not a mistake. Still, I couldn't understand what the people are doing. Where is the cemetery? And there in the forest, there were pails of sand, and they would grab it, mamish, with their hands, put in baskets, in some boxes, move it to another place, spill them down, collecting back more sand, bringing there. So finally I looked to the place where they would spill down the sand, and I saw a deep trench, and there were bones inside. Now I understood what's about. It was a place of massacre that people thought that in 1941, December 1941, a couple of days before Hanukkah, the Nazis exterminated 28,000 Jews. So the whole field was a cemetery, and there was trenches in it. It's what we have to do. For when they shot the people, they covered it with sand, but the time passed by, and the flesh got rotten, so the sand sank down, and they were like graves. We had to fill it with sand again and make to look it like Kever Israel. You know that there is the biggest mitzvah of Met Mitzvah. Says that even Kohen Gadol is going to Beis Hamikdash with his Pesach. He has to stop if he finds a Jew dead. He has to take care of it. So my privilege, my beginning of being Jewish started with the biggest mitzvah, to take care of Met Mitzvah, not simply tzaddikim that were killed by the Nazis. So when dealing with that, I asked myself, why wouldn't the Russian themselves, the Russian government, wouldn't establish and build a memorial for, you mentioned that they're being accused not once, that they are anti-Semites. They could be proud and say, see, it's the Russian Soviet army that fought against the Nazis. and we won the battle, you know. And then people see what the Nazis did with the Jews, and it is different from what we're doing. I mentioned memory, so I imagined that if they would build the memorial, people would come, say Kaddish, El Mulei Rachamim, Iskor. Iskor means remember, and it was exactly they were against. They tried to make us forget that we are Jewish. They tried to forget that there is Am Yisrael at all in Soviet Russia, making us like other goy. It is what we call the forcible assimilation. As Rabbi mentioned before, they closed all Jewish institutions, yeshivas, schools, whatever, nothing. So when I was born, I was ignorant altogether. I didn't know what does it mean being Jewish. Nobody could teach me. Nobody could educate me, even not my parents. So now, the moment I took the handful of sand and threw in the grave, I became the opponent of the Soviet regime. For they would like me and us forget that we are Jewish, and I would like to do the opposite. To remember and to make other people remember. So when I was back to my high school, I told friends, it's important, come, participate. There is very big, 28,000 people, we need a lot of hands. And it started like every Sunday we would come and build. So going 3 years later, imagine already we did something, and there was not like, you know, my first meeting, there were some maybe 20 older people. Now we had hundreds of young people that for the first time we met on the graves. It means that having 1 million of residents in this Riga city and only some 30,000 Jews, hardly could we meet. We had no congregation, no communities, nothing to, any case, any possibility to meet. So the dead people met us. We met there. My sister met my friend there on the graves, and they married. Now in Israel having a lot of grandchildren because of the dead people. We met, it sounds like a paradox, that we met and make friends on the graves. And by the way, it was not by chance. Older people, feeling that we are getting assimilated, looked for a place that they can make us meet each other. And they thought that maybe it would be a good idea to rebuild and reconstruct the cemetery, this massacre site. It was against the will of the authorities. The authorities tried to disturb us, but they failed. Hundreds of people would come. Later on, I already studied in a university, and one day, again, Sunday, during a break, young people start thinking. I thought to myself, maybe it's bad. You know, it's a custom of the Russians. They come to the graves, drink some vodka, and then sing songs on the grave. It's not a Jewish tradition. And then I listened to what they are singing. It was Am Yisrael Chai. It was David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. And it was Arza Alinu Arza. So I thought maybe it's good, you know. I thought maybe the dead people are listening to our young voices and they enjoy it. And then I had a question whether the dead people can listen, whether they hear. You know, there is a sugya in Perek Chelek and Sanhedrin, Achayim Meitim, Ameitim Chayim. So I hesitated and I told, no, I believe that, not that they are really alive, but their neshomas are listening and they enjoy to know, you know, imagine them being pushed in the grave, and the moment before everything became black, they told everything is lost. And now all of a sudden, after some 25, 30 years, young voices, Am Yisrael Chai, certainly they enjoyed. So it was my second mitzvah, my second concept of Tchias HaMetim. Later on, we had like a manifestation. It was not specifically on during the days of massacre, as I mentioned, Hanukkah time. It was whatever we had right now, Yom HaShoah VaGvura. So people come, hundreds of them. There were police and KGB, they couldn't do anything, you know. And people come and say Kaddish, and those say El Rachamim and Iskon. We won. And then it was my turn to speak, for I was one of the leaders, people that come the first ones. I didn't know what to do. I became a natural leader without election and primaries. So I told friends, see what a miracle happened to us. We come here some years ago to help the dead people. Now I told, we know that the dead people helped us. They brought us together. They give us the sense of being together, of being a nation, of being an Israel. And as far as the Nazis try to kill us, we know that our challenge is not only survive, to stand up. And I feel myself like I am, it is me that crawled out from the grave. And now I told, listen what the dead people are telling. They say us, never stay anymore in the cursed place, Lech Lecha. So it's a natural connection between Holocaust and the love to Israel, the land of Israel. It became our main goal to go and to remain Jewish. So right there in the forest, I met my friends, and I decided to establish an underground Jewish organization to educate and teach other people, other youngsters, that we are Jewish, that we have our land. So our movement started there, right there in the forest. It's a long story to tell how it was not easy at all to teach others, but we were also ignorant. We had to study Hebrew. I studied Hebrew by myself, and I became a Hebrew teacher without almost nothing. I had a textbook smuggled from Israeli embassy that time, and I studied by memory some 500 words and expressions. I started teaching others. So we opened Ulpanim, so-called Ulpanim, and then I studied Jewish history, started teaching history, and then tradition. A natural development. From general love to Israel, the love to the language, to the history, and then to the tradition. Now, I felt that it is not enough, it will not help. We can educate hundreds, maybe thousands, but that time we had in Russia almost 3 million of Jews, and my peers, my strata of age was at least 100,000. So what we can do, educating 1,000 people all over Russia. The only way to save, which was obvious, is to open the gate and let my people go out from Soviet Russia to Israel and to America. So I decided I'll go to a special office in charge of giving permission. There was you people buy a ticket and go wherever you would like to. In Russia, you couldn't do it. You have to ask for special permission from the authorities. And it was obvious they would give no permission. Anyway, so it is why people wouldn't apply. For the moment you apply, they would say, oh, you are willing to leave us. You don't like us. You are our enemy. So how at all you are taking this job, this position, or how you are studying in university. So getting nothing, you will lose everything. So people wouldn't apply. I decided, as I read in Chumash, V'yitzraku bnei Israel v'yishma Hashem, you have to cry out. Rabbi knows. But he expects us to do something, at least to cry out. So I decided it will be my step. I went to the office, asked for permission to leave, and the head of the office told me, what, you think we are stupid? You are a young man. That time I was younger than now. You are a young man, and the moment you come to Israel, you will be drafted to Israel army. And you know that we are enemies of Israel. We don't send soldiers to our enemies. You are studying in university, better accomplish your studies and build communism in Soviet Russia. Never, never you will go to Israel. Forget about that. Now go away. So when I was out of the office, I had two conclusions. For the beginning, it was obvious that he will not permit me to go. And then I thought, what? I will accomplish my studies in university, and I will become valuable for them. I better stay a simple worker without any potential for building communism in Soviet Russia. So I stopped my studies, and I was not aware that much that as far as studied in university, I was not mobilized to the Russian army. The moment I stopped my studies, I was summoned to go to a Russian army, and I understood that it's dangerous for me. The moment I have like exposure to military secrets, so-called, so it would permit me maybe for 20 years to live. How to escape serving in a Russian army? I felt that I have to sacrifice something. What can I sacrifice? You know, when you're willing to something to get, you have to do something, to pay money, maybe to have a telephone call, to do an effort. What can I do? And all of a sudden, I had an idea. I told, see Yosef, you are teaching others to go to Israel. What is the meaning to go to Israel? Simply a geographical change, to move from Soviet Russia to Israel? Certainly not. It means to come back to your roots. You are teaching tradition, history, whatever. What means roots? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. To be like them. To become religious. So I asked myself, you are teaching others, why are you not religious? And I hesitated and I told, you know, it's not comfortable. I was aware that to be Dati means a lot of restrictions and commandments, you know. It is not comfortable to you, so it is your sacrifice. So I declared and I told them, look at me standing in the room and saying, Ribbon Shalom, I promise you, if you take me out from Soviet army, I will be yours. And it happened. Miracle after miracle, I was released from Soviet army, and I went to a synagogue. Now I decided to be religious, to be educated. There were old people. I told them, teach me, educate me. They thought it's illegal. You cannot. We are not permitted to teach Yiddishkeit. You know, too bad. You decided to be religious. Nobody is ready to educate you. But still, I stayed in, as far as I promised to the God that I will become religious. I stayed in a synagogue. I picked up something, for I was a Hebrew teacher, so I could read the Siddur. I understood what's all the tefillahs. Step by step, I got it. But it was not enough. Again, the main problem, to open the gates. How to do that? And it happened. We had that time already a nationwide underground Jewish organization involved in education. We had chapters in many cities like Moscow and Leningrad, nowadays Petersburg, Riga and Kiev, etc., etc. And one day I got to know that there is a student in underground Ulpan in Leningrad that used to be a pilot in Russian Air Forces, Major Mark Dimshit. So he suggested us to try to hijack a Russian airplane and to publicize our case. We were aware that we may be arrested, even killed. Maybe we wouldn't succeed. But anyway, we believe that then it will be public that there are Jewish youths still not assimilated, still willing and connected to Am Yisrael, and maybe it will help. And we planned that if we would succeed, we would come to Sweden, for we couldn't go from Russia to Israel. You need a big airplane with a lot of fuel. We could only go over to Sweden to have there a press conference and ask for public opinion. Ask you, people in America, to help us, to do something. You mentioned this famous movement of let my people go, never again. My time it wouldn't exist. It starts later. So I will tell you a short story of our operation, and with Rabbi's advice, maybe you will ask questions, and I will continue. We shall have more time for. See, there is some more than 100 pages in the book, and every page is another story. It will take maybe a week to tell all the stories and small details. For when you are writing a book, you can bring all the details. So if you are ready, stay here.
Shabbos is at 7:30 on Friday. I found.
No, on Shabbos I will tell. Anyway, so we arranged. Major Dimshitz called us up from Leningrad to Riga. We have our military fighting group in Riga, and he told, see, I saw an ad in a local newspaper that there's being opened a new flight that fits us perfectly. Why? He told, I took the flight. It brings us from the suburb of Leningrad close to Finnish border. If you know some geography, Russia has common borders with Scandinavia there in the north, like Norway, Sweden, Finland. So it's close to Finnish border, but the scheme is different, he told. The moment the airplane would land in the forest, there is no guards, there is no security in the place. So if instead of fighting with the pilots in the air, let them land, and the moment one of the pilots, there were two pilots there, one stay seated in the front, and another one would come and open the door for tourists to let us out. Then we would suggest very politely and gently to the pilot to stay for a while in the forest. It was summertime, June 15. If he would refuse, we would explain it differently. But we decided without blood, you know. There were only 12 passengers on the board, all members of our fighting organization. So, you know, two old people, simply we could, you know, throw them away, not harming them. We had good sleeping bags to save for rest, and then we would go to Sweden and send back the airplane. You know, we are not terrorists, not hijackers. We needed only the vehicle, you know, to go free. So we bought the tickets, and it was summertime. We come from Riga to Leningrad. I will describe a night before the operation. We sat in a forest close to the small local airport, and we discussed all the details, how to take over. Mr. Dimshitz come as a military man and officer of Russian forces. He divided us in three groups. The one is a storming group, the head, and I was in a second group to assist them, and there was a certain third group to be, you know, in taking care of everything. So sitting peacefully, having like a fire with barbecue. They had tray sausages. I wouldn't participate, but when you look outside, it's you know, very romantic. You young people, tourists sitting and discussing whatever. All of a sudden, two black cars drove up. We looked at it. It looked like KGB cars. Some plainclothes people walk out from the cars. So we felt that they are going to arrest us. We were tense. It was like some 15 meters far away. They wouldn't come to our direction. I would go around. And then they went back and drove away. So we had an issue to discuss. Some friends told they know everything about us. We have to run away. And I told, if they know, it will not help. If even we run away, they will arrest us. So I told, if they arrest us on the escape, it will be our failure. It will be our loss. Let us continue our way. If they are going to arrest us, let them arrest us on our way to Israel. If they are going to kill us on the way to Israel. Then it will be our victory. Not everybody agreed. People hesitated, but Major Dimshitz supported my approach, and we decided we are going up to the end. So next morning, a beautiful day, we went to the airport. I felt privileged. I thought, you know, I read a lot about Mendelevitch, Trumpeldor, whatever, Jewish heroes. They changed their history. And now it is me. You know, I was excited. Later on, I read in Ilchos Milchama of Rambam that when a soldier is going to fight for Am Yisrael, he has to forget his family. He doesn't belong to anybody except of Klal Yisrael. And it was my feeling. Exciting, you know, expecting that I will do something, invest my life to free Am Yisrael. And then it was announcement, boarding, people started walking to the airplane. Again, it was a local airport, so it was done by foot. I was the last in the row. I looked to my friends. I was glad, you know. I dreamed really to get drafted in Israel army. I told, no, I am already in Israel army. Like, they are my paratrooper. It is Golani. That time Golani was famous. I am already in Golani. So, being excited this way, all of a sudden I noticed that my friends are looking around, like for something. I understood the reason, maybe my black beret. As a religious man, I covered my head with a black beret, and when leaving the forest, they told me, took it away. You know, it's strange that in Russia, nobody is going in summer with berets. It's suspectful. Now, you know, always Chilonim are laughing from the team. So I thought, forget about that. That's another case for them to look at me. Now we are going to save Am Yisrael, and they are looking to my black beret. And then I understood it is not it. They are looking for something else. I looked around and I understood what's happening. Mr. Dimshit, the Major Dimshit, was missing. So maybe he's arrested. Maybe he come with his wife. Maybe in the last moment, his wife told you are crazy, what you are doing, you're sacrificing your family. Anyway, we lost before we started. As being a soldier in Golani, you know, there is an expression in Hebrew, Rosh Gadol. You have to make your decision. Is there no time to decide, to sit together and to decide what to do? I decided I'll run back and look for Major Dimshit. Maybe he is staying outside the building of the airport, and it's how he wouldn't listen to the announcement. So I started running back. I never asked my friends what they thought about me. You know, Dimshit is missing, and now Mendelevitch, the courageous Mendelevitch, is running away. But later they understood the reason. So I come to the place that I saw Mr. Dimshit with his family, and indeed they were sitting there. It was morning. They had some sandwiches, and Mark Dimshit had even a guitar, very romantic, but it's not the time. I told him, Mark, you're crazy. We are already on the way to the airplane, and you're waiting here the sandwiches. He looked to his watch, and he told there is a problem. The boarding has to start, according to the timetable, 9 o'clock in the morning, and now it is only 8:30. He told, I don't like it, that's problematic. I told him, forget about that, you are used to Russian army, but it's not the army, everything can be changed. He hesitated for a while, and then he told, okay, I'm joining. So I start running back. If I described you how I was excited before, I was twice excited. I felt that I am like flying in the air from excitement. Mendelevitch saved the whole operation. I am bringing the pilot. We are going to win. Then the moment I entered the place that I left my friends, I was beaten, thrown out the airs, my hands handcuffed, really a movie, you know. And then when they lifted me, I saw I'm surrounded by people with weapon, and my friend, the time that I would run to see Dimshit and back, got arrested, handcuffed, a lot of police, paratroopers. They told later that when he come close to the airplane, paratroopers jumped from the airplane, and some more army came from around, maybe some hundreds of soldiers. And it's not a joke. A Jewish terrorist organization, we had weapons as well, is acting in the biggest city of Russia. So when I noticed the bad scenery, I heard shootings. I turned around, they shot at Dimshit. He would go, but a lot of blood going on from his forehead. It was terrible. His wife started crying. The two small daughters were altogether lost. For the father promised that we are going to the forest, enjoy the forest. And all of a sudden, the father is wounded. He was alive. That's okay. He died never in age 88 in Rehovot. But that time it looked very terrible. We had no time to think about anything. Each of us was taken to the building of the airport, and it turned out that it was really a trap. For in each office of this building, there were officers of KGB. I was pushed in a small room, and there were two Russian colonels of KGB. They produced a sheet of paper, an order of our arrest, and the prosecutor, the district prosecutor would tell in this order, according to the knowledge of secret services on the territory of this airport is acting a Jewish terrorist group that have the goal to harm state security, to betray the Russian motherland, and to run away to a capitalist, imperialist state. So the prosecutor would order to arrest people, to question them, and if it's true, some of them will expect death penalty. So when I saw the last line, I felt bad, for indeed, I was ready to die, but I figured that they will kill me during the shootings. We had weapons, they had weapons, or maybe they will hit our airplane with a rocket. But now I told I have to stay in a prison. They will question me. Who knows what kind of interrogation there would be, and then there will be a trial. And if they really pass death verdict, I have to stay and wait until they will take me to execute. Really, you have to be a hero. I can do it, I am a simple student. I am not a hero. What to do? But they never asked me. So they pushed me in these kind of black cars that we witnessed it yesterday. And on the way to the prison, to interrogation, I had the last glance to the scenery. Leningrad, Petersburg is a very beautiful city, built in 18th century. People going, it was summer, morning, people going to work, students, small children, life, and I lost my life. So I asked myself whether I regret. I asked Yosef, maybe it was a mistake, maybe you regret. I'm losing my life. I hesitated for a while and I told, in no way, I don't regret, for I know that if there's something valuable in your life, you have to pay for that. And if it is really valuable, you have to pay for your life, with your life. I love Eretz Israel, I love Am Israel, and I was ready to pay with my life. I was quiet. But, and it is another part of my story, I don't know whether we shall have time, but imagine thinking is different from being. The moment we were pushed in a jail of KGB and they start questioning us, people start giving away, giving names of other people, more people were arrested, it was a real disaster. So maybe the time of a question or continue, whatever you decide.
Maybe a couple of questions first on the first part. There's another part when he was actually sitting in jail and his ability to commit to Torah mitzvahs, but maybe a couple of questions in terms of what happened with the airplane. I have one quick question.
They decide. You have a question.
Okay. My question is, who do you think gave the information? Was it someone from the group? Someone, a Jewish person?
Right. I believe it is Eliyahu Hanavi. And I explain you why. For indeed, if we would succeed, and still having a weapon, we could kill somebody. It would be shameful for Am Yisrael and for everything, So the moment we were arrested, we became victims, and it became a case for you to demonstrate. It was a genius scheme.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So I will continue. Now, I mentioned that the people were arrested, and all our educational movement got crashed. Our students, and specifically the teachers, were accused being involved in terrorist activities. And I blamed myself for doing that. Sometimes we are very courageous, but not taking into account all the possibilities. I did thought that it may happen, but now when it happened, I thought it's the best. We crashed, in fact, we dreamt about something big, but realistically, we crashed the educational movement. Nothing happened. And then people are cooperating. My friends, heroes, giving names of other people, more people are being arrested. It was really horrible. What to do, And then I refused to cooperate with them, and they told me, you're not cooperating with us. You're not afraid of us. I told, kind of, I'm not afraid of you. So they told, maybe you have mental problems. You know, if you are not afraid of us, a normal person is afraid being in a jail of KGB. If you're not afraid of us, you have a mental problem. And they sent me to a psychiatrical institution in Moscow, so-called Serbsky Institute, which was a prison for political prisoners. If you don't like communism, you're crazy. So they told me, if you don't admit guilty, and if you don't give names of your friends involved in this plot, we will admit that you have mental problems, and we shall treat you medically. And then you will really become crazy. It was awful. I was afraid of that, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't give the names. I couldn't cooperate. So finally, after a month of so-called medical tests, I was sent back to continue interrogation. And then it happened to me that what they are going to have, during the trial, to have a performance that everybody would admit guilty, or more than that, they will blame you, American Jewry in Israel, infecting us with the terrorist ideas. And then call up on Russian Jews, see what happened with us, sit quiet, sit back. They won, you know. We start building their performance. I could spoil their game, so they look for another way to influence me. And there, you know, there is a way of, they're called stick and carrot approach. By the way, I don't carrots, I like cookies. They didn't know, so they used the carrot approach. What was that carrot like? Next time I was escorted to a different interrogator, a Russian officer, Popov, Captain Popov. He was a very polite man. He looked at me and he told me, Yosef, I feel sorry for you, you know. You're like my young brother, you know. I understand that you had like dreams and aspiration. It's true for a young man. But now you have to be realistic. You are in my hands. You cannot break the wall with your hand. You will break your hand. Cooperate, admit guilt, and then you will get some 7 up to 8 years of imprisonment. Out of the prison, you can start your life anew as a regular Soviet citizen, which I hated, you know. It was not a carrot and even not cookie for me to become a regular Soviet citizen. And then he looked at me and he told, you say that you are Jewish. You're not Jewish at all. You studied in our Russian high school. You know a lot of Russian poetry, which is true, you know. I know Pushkin by memory, and you read Tolstoy, whatever, if you some concept of what it means Russian literature. You speak a Russian language, you would say, better than me. You know, you are a Russian boy. So what that in your ID is written that you are Jewish? That's all. But in fact, you are a Russian boy. Come back, forget being Jewish. So he felt that I'm hesitating, and he sent me back to my cell to think again. You can see me going around in the cell, and I would say maybe he has right, you know. Maybe it's the time to be realistic, to save my life, and to cooperate. Later on, being released, still I will be like 28 years old. I can try to go to Israel. But if they execute me, no hope. But then I got angry. What? He is saying that I am not Jewish? I am Jewish. It's the best thing that I discovered in my life, that I belong. I used to be a regular Soviet citizen, and the moment I discovered that I belong, thank that dead people, whatever, it's the meaning, it's the sense of my life being Jewish. And he's trying to take it away. And then I thought to myself, so how I am Jewish? How I can show that I am Jewish? You know, normally we have yarmulkes, we put on film and tzitzis, whatever, and sidurim, but I was stripped from everything in my cell, in a basement room. So I decided now I have create myself and you as a Jew. And it was obvious to me that to behave Jewish meant keep mitzvahs. You understand? I had a double task. To make them see that I am Jewish, that I am different, and to keep me strong, and to make me remember that I am not like them. for a man in circumstances like that, since maybe, you have to give up to save your life. Why not? And people will understand. I could even come to you later and tell the story. You had right, to be realistic and cooperate for life, for a time to. Anyway, what kind of mitzvahs I could invent? I had nothing there. No, not feeling, not tzitzis. Maybe to take him to the bath to show that I have a bris milah, but it's not enough. Anyway, I mentioned that I had a Black Beret in the airport. When I was thrown on the ground, I lost my beret. Baruch Hashem, I wouldn't lose my head at least, but I lost the beret. I had something to look for to cover my head, to have a yarmulke. I couldn't ask them, they would laugh at me. I asked for a yarmulke. So I invented my yarmulke. I had a handkerchief. Every old Jew has still handkerchiefs. You are a young man, you have tissues, right? We old people use handkerchief, so it helped me. It's advisable, have handkerchief, use tissues, but have a handkerchief as well. So I made knots on my handkerchief, like this, put it on my head. I made 4 knots, but not to take it too long. And when I was escorted to the office of my Russian brother Popov, he looked at it and he told, "You are completely crazy. Not by chance you were sent to a mental institution." And then he told, "Take it away, you are an educated man, behave." So I told, "Real, I am educated, but it is our Jewish education. And you guys, when you enter an office, you remove your hat." And we are just the opposite. And then I produced him a whole speech about Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yetzias Mitzrayim, whatever. He wrote it angrily. It was the first report that I would sign. And then he sent me back and he told me, "You think you are smart, you are stupid. For with this behavior, you are digging your grave. Think again, it doesn't pay you." So when I was back to my basement room, I felt better. When the enemy is not pleased with your behavior, it means you are doing well. So I imagine that I'm building a wall between me and him. I have to add more. What else? What kind of mitzvahs I can invent? And again, I had a double task. To demonstrate them, it should be something that I can demonstrate, and then to strengthen me as well. So maybe you have an idea what you would do, as Rabbi asked, in a condition like that?
Eat kosher.
Eat kosher, you can ask kosher, but there is no kosher food in Russian jail. You eat whatever they give you. I decided that I will daven. Litpalel is normal, when a person is in a hospital, God forbid, in a prison. It's a normal feeling, that who can help you? Ribbon Shalom. By the way, there is a lot of stories that just in a situation like mine, being in a hospital, people all of a sudden remember that there is a God. They wish them they would remember before, but at least during being ill in the hospital, their relatives, they start praying. So it was good, for I will demonstrate that I am praying, and I will pray. I will daven. So I didn't remember Shmoneh Esrei by memory, but I did remember something. I wrote it in Hebrew, and then I would add God of Israel, Elokei Israel, take care of Am Israel in Russia, take them out from slavery, and then remember my family, my father, my sisters, and take me out from the prison. I cannot withstand anymore. It's too hard to me. So I had another problem. Where's the Mizrach? Here's the Mizrach, here, not especially, right? The Mizrach. But in prison, you don't know where is Mizrach. I had a small window in the top of the wall, but they had a lot of grates on it, so hardly I could tell day from night, not certainly Mizrach from Ma'ariv. So I decided I will behave like Daniel HaTzadik. In our underground, we had Sefer Daniel. You remember Sefer Daniel, you are teaching it somehow. I did remember that Daniel HaTzadik had my problem some 2,500 years before me. He would like to daven in direction of Yerushalayim, and he wouldn't know, he wouldn't have a smartphone to find out where is the direction of Yerushalayim. So he would come up and say Aliyah Sagag, open a window, and direct his heart toward Yerushalayim. And it's in Shulchan Aruch, by the way. One of the recommendations, if you know the direction, do like that. So I couldn't open the window, but at least I could stand at the wall, looking in the window, imagining, and believe me, my heart was pointed exactly towards Yerushalayim. So I would stood at the wall, like having my piece of paper, my tefillah, crying out, Ana Hashem, Hoshiana. Not Atzlichana, what kind of Atzlocha, at least Hoshiana. After a while, like after a couple of days, the guards opened the door, rushed, grabbed in the wall and told, we watch you all the time, you're touching the wall like davening like this, and you're looking in the window. What you know the explanation of your strange conduct? So that maybe, you know, you read about Monte Cristo, that is there is a story of Monte Cristo, a famous man that was able to run away, took out bricks out from the wall and ran away from the prison. So they checked the bricks, everything was intact. They checked the grades, nothing happened. What's the reason? You're looking in the window, touching the wall. So they checked my pockets, and they found my tefillah. So they told, now we understand. It is a secret letter that you try pass over to your friends. You know, I could be crazy, you know, but not imagine that you can, through a locked window, send a letter without envelope and without an address. But they had no explanation. So they took, it was written in Hebrew, they took it to translate, and later on I was escorted again to my big Russian brother, Captain Popov. I saw on the top of his desk this, my tefillah, the translation, and he told me angrily, Yosef, I got a translation, it's a prayer. You are praying, you became religious. What's happening with you? Who influenced you? Imagine a young man is seated all together, isolated in a room, and starts all of a sudden covering his head, davening. Certainly somebody influenced me. Who influenced me? So you have, certainly, Ribbon Shalom. So you have a direct evidence, and I witness when you are alone, you are not alone. Certainly, you know, I had two ways to decide, to cooperate, to give up, and not to cooperate. There was no other solutions. I had the third one, to become religious. It's illogical altogether. Certainly, it was the God that influenced me, and I'm privileged, and I'm glad that it is what He taught me, and I became religious. I was religious before that, but then I told him, you know, every man, every Jew is religious. All right? Neshama shenatata bi Torahi. Everybody of us has the Jewish soul, and it is the way we are connected to the Ribbon Shalom. Sometimes we know it, sometimes we discover it later. Does depend on us. So he was angry and sent me back. There are more stories. I believe we have to finish. So I will describe you the last miracle, not the last, one of the miracles that happened. It was a time for the trial. We were brought to the court, and we were not permitted to communicate, or they maybe were afraid that somebody will tell what you are crazy, what you are cooperating. No possibility. Two surgeons guarding us from two sides, and no possibility to talk to somebody else. But then a friend of mine, Aryeh Hanoch, living now in Barkan settlement next to Ariel, managed to whisper and say, Yosef, today is Hanukkah. It made me remember that I started my activities there in a massacre site during the Hanukkah. And I told, it is a sign from the heaven. Ribbon Shalom, not by in vain, put our trial, positioned our trial to be during the Hanukkah. For Hanukkah means Yeshua's and Nechamas. Maybe a miracle will happen, and it happened. The first one to be questioned was Major Dimshit. Dimshit, you were a major in the Russian army. Later on, you got a second degree in engineering. You got an engineer. You got everything from your motherland. How at all you come to betray your motherland? And when you are listening from outside, you feel really the man is bad, you know, got everything from his motherland. He stood up, and Mr. Dimshit certainly had something to lose, for he certainly expected death penalty. His wife was arrested, and I don't know where his two daughters were. He stood up. He asked the big performer to start the performance of blaming a war jury, whatever. He told, I accuse the Soviet government in anti-Semitism. You closed all our educational institutions. You try to suppress us. You try to assimilate us forcibly. And then he told, the very fact that you support the Arabs against us, you explain it with all kind of political reasoning. The only one reason is that you hate everything Jewish. And finally we have our Jewish state, you hate it. It's why you try to eliminate it. A courageous man was not afraid to get his death penalty, which he got later. And then the second to be asked was Silva Zalmanson. Her husband, Eduard Kuznetsov, was arrested twice. And you know, like in Mishnah, Shor Muad, that somebody that committed twice a political crime is considered a lost person, has to be shot. So Silva cried all the time, and they felt that she is broken. Silva, what's the reason you betrayed your Russian motherland? She thought, for each of us swear from his very childhood, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishkach yemini. So the judge asked for a translator. She told, no need, I will translate you. And she told in Russian, when he got the Russian translation, I believe you know, this psalm, I saw that the judge will collapse. For he was promised by KGB that the performance is set, everything is good, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. So the moment the two courageous men set the mode of behavior, all other behave courageously. And each of them announced and pronounced, Ani ma'amin. I looked to my friends and I told them, like candles, that they are lightening their candle right there in Hanukkah from their flesh and bones. And it was our press conference. We planned to have a press conference in Sweden. This one was much more stronger. So the news got through, you start people demonstrating, and certainly they produced the death penalties for Mr. Dimshit, for Mr. Kuznetsov, Silva's husband. I got 15 years of imprisonment for trying to hijack a Russian airplane, some 15 years of imprisonment for betraying my Russian so-called motherland, and 7 years of imprisonment for Jewish underground activities. So the word went through, started demonstrating, and again, after 7 days, some friend, Ari Hanoch, on Zota Chanukah, knocked at my wall, and that time we were instructed that somebody is knocking at the wall, he is willing to speak. So I listened what he's telling. He told, I had a meeting with my brother, and he told that under heavy word, public opinion, Jewish opinion pressure, the Russian step back. And they canceled death penalties, and softened all other penalties. Dimshit got 15 years of imprisonment, Kuznetsov, you yourself got only 12 years of imprisonment. Silva got 8 years of imprisonment. We won the battle. So imagine, we are not in vain I described you our failure, that we could be blamed for crashing the whole educational movement. We fall in the trap. Ribono Shel Olam looked at us and perhaps thought, good boys, they tried to do something good for Am Yisrael, took us from the bottom of the shame and made us heroes. And then the Russian government decided to start immigration. And year after us being in prison, some 30,000, 1-3, got permission to leave. Next year, some 30,000, 3-0, got permission to leave. Next year, 35,000. So I told, if being in prison I can bring freedom to other people, I am ready to stay. It is another mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuim. Sometimes you make Pidyon Shvuim, you pay with money. Sometimes being in a prison. So when finally, after 11 years of imprisonment, I got released, I was aware that already almost 300,000 Jews got permission to leave. And being released, now, directly from the prison, you see me here in a black suit. It's from Pierre Cardin. It is what KGB bought me, you know, to send me to the West to show, you know, he's not a miserable person, you know, he is looking like a real Haredi. So, being brought me to the airport, and I talked to a colonel that escorted me for. I figured that he is a head, maybe of Jewish department in KGB, and I told, officer, you arrested us 11 years ago to prevent us to go to Israel. Now you bought me a ticket just to get rid of me, you know. And I told, you have to admit that it was your mistake. And he admitted, he told, you know, we never could believe that you people have the strong will of you. And I interpreted, I am going to finish, I interpreted it differently. Before my arrest, I taught my students in undergrad Ulpan the famous proverb saying, Ein davar haomed bifnei haratzon. There is nothing that can withstand the will. Haratzon means not general will. Haratzon means his will. Ribbon Shalom wants to be good Eden, good Jews, be in our land. It is a time. The moment you are following his will, nothing can withstand his strong will. Nothing can withstand his ratzon. And it is how the Russian Empire collapsed, and Am Yisrael Yotzeh Biyad Ramah. Thank you.